Hello, everyone. Today we're going to look at Charlie Haden. Charlie's one of my favorite bass players, and shout out to Bass Goblin for the request on this one. We're going to talk about the song Peace by Ornette Coleman. 1959's The Shape of Jazz to Come is recognized today as one of the most important albums in the history of jazz music. While this isn't the first example of so-called free music, this record did live up to its name as it lays the foundation for the avant-garde developments that would take place in the 1960s and beyond. Many musical conventions were broken on this record, from the reimagining of the role of the bass and the abandonment of strict form to the motif-heavy horn improvisations, often defying harmonic and melodic expectations. Peace is a memorable track from this record. It has a highly arranged AABA melody. On your first listen, you might assume that the solos are free or at least in time without chord changes. There is a clear melody, and then all bets are off during the solos, right? Wrong. A grounding quality during each solo is the return to the B section that contrasts the harmonic meandering of the horns and disjunct bass lines. This happens under both soloists, but it's most evident under Don Cherry's solo, where Charlie holds out whole notes to mark the B section. I assumed initially that these B sections were likely cued by the soloist as a way to create memorable events in the performance. It turns out that that idea was even naive. At this point, I'll be piggybacking off of the work of Jazz Capacitor, or his real name, Dave Fink, who has uploaded some great transcriptions. Let's break down what's actually happening from the perspective of Charlie's bass playing on Peace. First of all, I was horrified to see that there's a consistent form to the solos. This isn't obvious when listening to the track, and for good reason. The horns are not exactly outlining the changes as you would expect, and the section lengths themselves are unconventional. The A sections, or at least the first and the second A, happen to be 11 measures long. The bridge itself is 10 measures long, just like you hear in the melody. And then the last A is 11 or 12 bars. You'll see that it's a little bit murky, but these lengths of sections are not decided arbitrarily either. The harmonic content of Charlie's bass line undeniably paints a picture of a deliberate and consistent song form. Let's look at a visual analysis of the bass playing to help us decode what's happening. Okay, so we can take a look at three different qualities of this performance. We have the form. We have the harmonic rhythm of the bass line. We also can relate the note choices to the melody. So what I've done here is I've actually taken that transcription from Jazz Capacitor and split it section by section, taking a look at the length of the bars. Pretty consistently, you can find 11 bar sections for the A's. The bridge is always 10 bars. It's always the same notes that Charlie plays during the melody, every single chorus. And then the last A is kind of up for grabs. I would have to disagree a little bit with some parts of this transcription. I think that the end of chorus 1 is actually 11 bars, not 12. So I've blocked off the last measure taken from Jazz Capacitor's transcription and actually crudely added it to the top of the second chorus, making that section 11 bars long as well. Going through, there are some discrepancies to the last measure throughout the rest of the performance, however. So you'll see the last A of the second chorus is unquestionably 12 measures long. You'll notice something kind of funny, and we'll take a listen to this to really break it down, but there is a bar of 2 in the, oops, let me fix that. Something kind of funny happens in the third chorus in Charlie's playing. He accidentally adds, or can I even say accidentally? Who knows? Maybe we won't say accidentally, but he does add 2 extra beats, which creates a little bit of a consequence when you're looking at the transcription. I would argue that those 2 extra beats happen right here. And as we take a look later at the harmonic implications of Charlie's bass playing, it'll make sense why that's the case, why that measure of 2/4 is actually there. But nonetheless, taking a look at the length of these sections, that would make this section 11.5 bars instead of 11. And the second A of the third chorus actually 11 bars instead of 10.5 bars long. Inevitably, when you take a recording and try to put it into writing, you have to make some decisions in terms of how you want to represent this information. And I would argue that this is the case, and we'll take a look at that as we listen. But one thing that you notice really consistently is that the A sections, at least A1 and A2 of each chorus underneath the soloist, is 11 bars long. And without a doubt, the B sections are always 10 bars long. The last A before the head out, the third A of chorus number 4, Charlie sort of hangs out on this E flat, and it basically feels like there's an extra 2 bars at the end of the song before the melody comes back in. All right, so enough visual information. Let's take a listen to the bass playing underneath the solo sections and see how Charlie is actually staying on form this entire time. It's pretty hip. Top. Second A. The beat. Same notes as the melody. Last A. Okay, did you hear that? The little bass drum kick? That's why I argue the top of the second chorus should start there. Billy Higgins clearly marks the form with the little thump of the bass drum pedal. One more time. B. It's again the exact same notes as the melody. All right, so chorus number 3 is where the extra 2 beats come into play. And I'll show you once again where I think it happens, and it'll make sense later as we break down the harmonic information. But this right here is going to be 2 extra beats, all right? Think of that as a bar of 2/4. Okay, let's listen from the top of chorus 3, Don Cherry solo. They get really loose here. Charlie brings the time back in. Head. Okay, wow. That's a lot to unpack, right? Clearly, there's a strong sense of form. They play the bridge the same time every chorus. Wow. So I think at this point, it's pretty hard to deny that there's a really consistent form to the piece. Roughly 11 bar A's and always a 10 bar B. And the last A is either 12 or 11 or maybe 13 bars long. It's not really clear. The form always seems to get muddied at that point of the courses. Let's knock any doubts about the intention of Charlie's bass playing by taking a look visually at the harmonic information that he's playing. So I've gone through the task here of identifying qualities that repeat. What I mean by that is there are certain tendencies or certain harmonic implications that Charlie plays in his bass playing. Chorus after chorus, section after section. I've compiled all the A sections here. And what do you notice between all of them? Well, let me just point out the obvious. Notice that there are very similar tops to the A sections, marked in green. What exactly is similar about these things? Well, I'll point that out in our next section as we relate his playing to the melody to make sense of really what's happening here. But there you have it, right? You can see clear as day. There are many similarities between the sections that they play. Well, I know anyone can just put colors on a sheet of paper and make it seem like there's something significant here. So let's break down what exactly is happening. To really make sense of his bass playing section by section, it makes a lot of sense to relate what he's playing to the melody. So these green sections relate to what he played at the top of the melody. There's a general harmonic tendency of G flat something, major, dominant, I'm not sure. G flat pitch going to B, eventually going to that low E, and then an A kind of major sound. Exactly like we see in his bass playing, right? On the melodies. G flat, B flat, beat, open E, A major sound. And then what he does in the melody, he doesn't do much during the solos, but it goes to a D major sound after that. But the general tendency is for him to play or reference these opening 3 bars from the melody. Let's take a look at how he does that. Remember, key points here. You got G flat, B, E, and A. These are the bass tonal centers. Well, what's happening here? G flat, B flat, B, E. It's exactly how he plays it during the head. What about this one? Okay, you got a G flat kind of major sound. Oh, he's got the open E. He's got the A major sound. It's clearly a reference to what happens in the melody. Same thing kind of here, right? You got G flat. Oh, look at that. It goes to our open E. It's got our E kind of major 7-ish sound, eventually going to that open A as well. He skates around, or at least references in part, what was played during the melody. The top of the second chorus, if you recall, that's where things get a little bit funky in terms of how do we identify what the actual top of this section is? Is it the kick that Billy Higgins plays, or is it something else entirely? Well, harmonically, I'll admit this part gets a little bit fuzzy. We have, it starts on the pitch F and then plays G flat, then E flat, then C flat or B natural. So that, I'm thinking of this as kind of like G flat major-ish to our B. Then we have B flat, B, E, D natural. B flat, B, and E, those all work well over an E Lydian sound. I'm not really sure what they're thinking. I'm not even talking about this stuff kind of feels ridiculous because I'm not even sure that they were thinking in terms of chord symbols in the academic way that we refer to this stuff, but who cares? For the sake of the presentation, let's rationalize every little note choice that Charlie made. Okay, so we've got our D natural going to C sharp, E, and A. That's an A major sound, baby. As literal as it gets. All right, let's move on to the next section. G flat. Oh, look at that. He's got C flat, or that B note. Open E. Wow. Okay, so once again, another reference to the melody, or at least a reference to the bass part of the melody. Same deal here. G flats, Bs, open Es. Yes, sir. All day. It happens quite literally in every A section. Okay. So now that I've driven that point home, let's take a look at the next color that we can relate to the melody, and that is this purplish hue. So if I were to relate that to anywhere in the melody, undeniably it would be right here. Charlie has a tendency to play E flat, followed by D flat, followed by B, followed by A, followed by a D major sound of some sort. It's kind of a departure from the melody a little bit, but you could rationalize it against the notes of the melody even. Do, 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 do. On that line, you could imagine a bass playing E flat under the first two beats. D flat would work under the next two beats. But again, this is kind of ridiculous. I don't think it really matters that much. This is just the tendency that happens, and we can relate it to this part of the melody. Why can we relate that to this part of the melody? Because the next color, orange, that I've identified, Charlie plays the same thing down a semitone, just like how the melody here is one semitone below the melody here in purple. Okay, so let's try to make sense of this. Remember, the key things that we're looking for here are the tendency of the bass part to do this. E flat, D flat, B, A, and a D major sound, okay? E flat, D flat, C flat, which is B, to our A major, to, look at this, D, F sharp, and A. That's a D major sound. That's the tendency that always happens in full or in part under this purple section. Same thing here. E flat, D flat, B, A, D major sound. You got F sharp, A, and D. Same deal over here. E flat, D flat, B, open E, A to our D major sound. F sharp, A, and D. It happens all over the place. Let's take a look at this example, for instance. E flat, D flat, B, A. You got your D major sound. D, C sharp, D, and A. A major 7 sound. Okay. The next color, as I mentioned earlier, is this orangey color. And that tendency is to play this bass motion. D, C, B flat, and A flat. All right, look at this. Do, D, do, C, B flat, A flat. Always has that. Here you go. D, D, C, C, B flat, A flat. Eventually go into the C, giving you an A flat major sound of some kind. In the third A of the first chorus, you notice that it doesn't really happen much. Charlie takes some harmonic liberties here. I guess kind of proving the point that this music was rather spontaneous with loose rule sets, but they often changed the harmonic implications based on the moments that happened in the performance. All right. Nonetheless, let's continue. So remember, in the orange sections, we're looking for D, C, B flat, and A flat. Well, here's a good example. Open D, D, C, B flat, A flat. You kind of have this 2 beats for each note center happening. All right. Same thing here. He kind of offsets it a bit in this part, but you've got C to D, B flat to C, B flat, and then A flat. All in 2-bar chunks. I meant to say 2 beat chunks, not 2-bar chunks. This all happens in 2 beat chunks. Okay. Here's the next example. D, D, C, C, B flat, B flat. Oh, extended. A naturals before going to the A flat. but it's the same idea. It's a rather loose approach to any sort of sense of concrete harmony, but these themes are clear. You have one idea, and then the next idea is roughly one semitone lower, just like in the melody. It's an obvious reference to the melody. Okay, and then the last thing I wanted to mention here is marked in gold. You've got that unison line, do-do-bo-dee-bo-dee-dee-do. And usually Charlie plays some sort of an E flat minor sound, but occasionally implies a B flat or a 5 chord resolving to the E flat minor. So you'll get a lot of D naturals resolving up to E flats, for example. All right, let's take a look at where we can find this. Here you go, in the first chorus, right? Right at the end of the first A, B flat, D, E flat, boom, 5-1. Same thing here, B flat, D, E flat. Here you go. This one, at the end of that questionable last A section, you've got B flat, F, G flat, B natural, B flat, G flat. Whoa. It kind of sounds to me like 5, although not an overtly dominant sound, but it's still B flat and F. That fits nicely on a B flat 7 chord, to skating around an E flat sound, or maybe even a G flat sound. As I argued the case before, I think this is actually the first bar of the next section. Okay, let's take a look here. Doesn't really play that E flat minor sound at the end of the first A in the second chorus, but we've got that same kind of thing on the second A. D natural going to E flat, clearly implying some sort of a resolution or a 5, a dominant resolving to 1 minor sound. Okay, same thing here. D, E flat, D, E flat, 5-1, 5-1. You can think of it that way. All right, what about the next one? F, G flat, B flat, E flat, F, G flat. This was that measure, or that section rather, where I concluded earlier that I think that this is truly a bar of 2 here, and that offsets the rest of the harmonic rhythm. So really what's happening here is you have this. Maybe you could argue it's a 5-1 sound, but really it just screams E flat minor to me. You got the 2, the flat 3, the 5, the 1, and the 2 leading up to the G flat at the top of the next section. Okay, let's wrap together an idea that I tried to mention earlier. I was explaining why I think this is a bar of 2-4, and the reason is every single section has that E flat, D flat, B, A root motion 4 bars into the A sections. It is like a harmonic event, a harmonic milestone in each of these 11-bar A sections. You have 4 bars of something, 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 and then this E flat, D flat, B, A, D major sound always happens at the 5th bar, or 4 bars into a section. You see it here. You also see it here. At the top of this section, remember, we sort of appended an extra measure. So let me copy that from this earlier section. Let me crudely copy this. This is why I suggested that there's actually an extra bar here. Because if you have 4 bars at the top, and it also aligns with that bass drum hit, that puts the harmonic rhythm perfectly in this section, if that makes sense. That makes the harmonic rhythm accurate. Where this section, the E flat, D flat, B, A aligns at the 5th measure of that A section. Let's carry on. Hey, what do you know? You have it here as well in the second A of the second chorus. At the 5th measure, or 4 bars into that section, you have this event in the bass part. Same thing here. It always comes at the 5th bar in a section, without fail. Of course, I can't really speak so certainly. So that brings us to this bar of 2/4, or what I suggest is a bar of 2/4. What I'm really thinking is that this is 2 extra beats that Charlie maybe played by accident, because if you were to remove that, that would cause this section, the E flat, D flat, B, A walk down, to align perfectly at the 5th bar of that section. All right. Sometimes he doesn't play it at all. Let's take a look at this section, right? The second A of the 3rd chorus is really unique because Charlie, in the green part, my terminology here is sounding ridiculous. The green part, he plays the G flat, B, E, A sound, but just like he did during the melody, he stretches to a D major sound. Okay, then what happens next? At the 4th bar of that section, he simply does not play that E flat, D flat, B, A. But he does come to the D, C, B flat, A flat sound shortly after. So just as we saw in an earlier A section, Charlie sometimes takes some harmonic liberties with the tune. It's clear that there is a form, it's clear that there's an implied harmony, but it's also clear that it's not a strict rule. Okay, let's move on to another idea here. So we've already covered green, blue, orange, and yellow. There are some other colors that maybe you noticed, and that's because sometimes Charlie plays some different stuff entirely. We have this baby blue and we have this like violet color. I don't know. We'll call it baby blue and violet. Sometimes Charlie's implying that 5-1 or that B flat 7 to E flat minor sound, just like he does at the end of the sections, or sometimes it's just straight up E flat minor. Let's take a look at where that happens. So E flat minor, baby blue. Here in the 1st chorus, right? He plays, you've got your green section, and then after that, B flat, F, B flat, A flat, G flat, F, E flat. I mean, there's nothing dominant about that. There's no D naturals in here. If anything, it's all diatonic to E flat minor. With the exception, of course, of this open A, which just sets up our B flat in the next measure. Okay, let's move on. Where else do we see baby blue? E flat minor, baby blue. Do we see it anywhere? Ah, you see it here in the last solo. In the last solo courses. So right here, right? F, B flat, E flat. Okay, is that overtly E flat minor? No, but it's not really B flat 7, and that's what I'm getting at here. Okay, also in the second A of the 4th chorus, B flat, E flat, G flat, F. It's all E flat minor. And okay, so that covers that. Let's take a look at a little 5-1 action, our violet color. Where do we see that? Well, you see it here, right? Okay, A natural doesn't fit on a B flat 7, but the A natural kind of acts as a sidestep going to the B flat, which then goes to the D, which then resolves to the E flat minor. Highlighting some of the harmonic liberties that are always taken on this track. Here you go. B flat, D natural, F, B flat. Huh. That's almost like a B flat 7 the entire time that eventually resolves to our E flat in the next section. Okay. Next. Doesn't play it there. Here you go. This one's kind of interesting. B flat, F, B flat, B natural, a little flat 9, and then a walk down. B flat, A flat, F. Wow. B flat, A flat, G flat, F. Okay, so not exactly a stable 2 measures, but if anything, I would say this sounds like a B flat 7, flat 9, which would then go to our E flat, a little 5-1 resolution. All right, this one's kind of fun. You see more of that sidestepping action. B flat, A natural, B flat, D, B flat, D. Ah, B flat, D. That's a B flat major sound. B flat dominant, resolving to our E flat minor. No doubt about it in my mind. All right. You see the same thing here, kind of like what we saw before. B flat, F, B flat, B natural, or C flat, flat 9, 1, 1, flat 7. Very cool. And then you even have the D natural over here to the G flat before going to the E flat minor. So a little double, what do you call that? An enclosure of sorts. I don't know. It's been a while since I've been in music school. I forget what we call that stuff. It's all noise. All right. And then we see one more magenta or violet section here. B flat, B flat, B flat. He's got a little sidestepping action. Once again, B flats and then D natural, leading nicely into our E flat. What can you say? So, in conclusion, it's hard to really identify anything that is a hard rule in this song. So maybe my title for this video is a little bit clickbaity, I admit. Peace is not free in the sense of no rules whatsoever. Charlie really establishes a strong form on the song. I would love to know more about how they recorded this music, if it was off the page, or if maybe they were even reading this down in the studio. I would love to know if there's an original lead sheet for this song, if there's any implied harmony, if Charlie was just thinking of the melody the whole time. I mean, clearly there's a strong form. At least what Billy Higgins plays with the bass drum implies to me clear as day that these are supposed to be 11-bar A sections with a 10-bar bridge. So it seems to me that this is all completely intentional and not just a beautiful coincidence. But obviously, within the framework of the song and within the form of the song, there's a lot of room to take liberties. You can see a lot of sections here that don't really fit nicely into any given box harmonically. The ones that these sections that I omitted from my coloring scheme. But yeah, hopefully that makes sense to you, the viewer. I could be totally insane. This could be gibberish, but seems to make a lot of sense to me. And let me know your thoughts. Is there anything else you want me to pick apart? And this would be a good time to do a little bit of my shameless promo. So if you'd like to join me on Patreon, yes, I have a Patreon like many others. It's a great way to support me in my efforts of bringing high quality education and bass related content and music related content to you. You can sign up for free if you wish, but there are also a few premium tiers that would be worth your while. We have a low-cost tier that grants you access to some exclusive content, but the granddaddy of them all, the premium tier, includes a private lesson once per month with me. I have a limited number of slots available for that tier. Anyways, that's enough about me. All of your support means a great deal to me. Please, if you haven't already, consider subscribing to this channel. Please like it if you liked it. If you didn't like it, don't click dislike. Just send it to somebody you don't like. How about that? Deal? All right. Until next time.